Hey, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. I'm Ivy, and today I'm going to be doing my June wrap-up and my July TBR. So if you're new here, I like to talk about the stuff that I watch as well as the stuff that I read, so we're gonna start off by talking about the movies that I watched in June. It was a very exciting month because I got to go back to the movie theaters for the first time since COVID hit. The first film that I saw was A Quiet Place Part II. I cannot decide if I liked this one or the first one better. I absolutely love both of them. This is such an original and terrifying concept. If you don't know, basically in these movies, Earth has been overrun by these creatures that hunt by sound. If you make any noise at all, really, they come and they kill you. The brilliant thing about these movies is you are so tense the entire time because it's so quiet, you know, because the characters are being quiet because that's how they survive, but you're so on edge because any wrong move that they make will end up with them being attacked and possibly killed, and it's terrifying. I've become very attached to this family that we're following. I love them so much, and like anytime they're in danger, I can't handle it. The acting in these films is incredible because there's so little dialogue. They have to rely on body language and facial expressions. I thought this was a really strong sequel because there were flashbacks which like gave us more context and explained some stuff, but it also moved the story forward really well, and I liked that a lot. The soundtrack is great. Like, oh, as soon as it opens and the music starts, you're like, okay, this is gonna be a really fun, intense ride. I love these movies so much. I actually saw it twice in theaters, once with a friend and once with my parents because I just loved it so much. 5 out of 5 stars. I think I almost cried. Next, I watched The Conjuring Part II. This was solid. It was definitely freaky with some very intense scenes. It's like a haunted house possession type of story. It wasn't super original, like it wasn't mind-blowing or just really creative like A Quiet Place is, but it was still really fun and intense, like I said, and I had a good time watching it. Something that really bothered me in this one was that they added so much like cheesy romance stuff that absolutely did not have to be in there. It made it way too long. It took away from the point of the movie. It was not there for stupid mushy-gushy romance stuff. I was there for the horror stuff. It was a bit too long. I feel like by the end it was dragging on, and I was just ready for it to be over. What's crazy about the Conjuring movies though is that they're all like based in truth, and so at the end you see like pictures and you hear tapes of what actually happened, and it's pretty freaky. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars and I did not cry. I actually watched a short film this month, which is pretty rare for me, and that was If Anything Happens, I Love You. It's on Netflix about parents who are grieving after they lost their daughter in a school shooting. Obviously, there are some pretty heavy trigger warnings in this. It's very intense and hard to handle. All I'm gonna say about this one is that it's beautiful and it was tragic and so sad. I think you should watch it for yourself. I don't want to tell you too much because it's only 12 minutes long, and like, what can I say without giving everything away? I gave it 5 out of 5 stars and I did cry. After that, I decided that I needed something a bit more fun, so I watched Awake. This has a great premise. Basically, humanity is no longer able to sleep and society is falling into chaos, and the main character has to protect herself and her 2 kids as, you know, everything's going to hell. This was absolutely a hot mess, but I loved every second of it. I really enjoyed myself. I just had a fun time, tried not to like think too hard about it, relaxed, and it served its purpose. It was exciting and interesting enough to keep me watching, although it wasn't anything like super great or anything. I don't know, I was just there and enjoying myself. I just love movies that explore stuff like this, and especially like how we as humans would react to something like this. I find that really fascinating and, you know, just fun. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars and it did not make me cry, but I swear I was pretty close because I was really tired and just like, oh my god. Then I watched The Conjuring Part III, The Devil Made Me Do It. So this is another one with an interesting premise. We have this teenager who murders somebody and then he pleads not guilty by reason of demonic possession. This is definitely, in my opinion, the weakest link of the 3 Conjuring movies. It was just kind of bland. I mean, there were a few good scenes, but overall it just wasn't that scary and I was just kind of bored. I felt like it was definitely relying on the jump scares, at least for me, like, to make it scary. Jump scares are gonna get you every time, but there wasn't really anything super, like, unsettling about it. And when I watch a horror movie, I want, like, my skin to crawl. I want to be freaked out when I try to sleep that night, and that didn't happen with this one. Again, there was more mushy-gushy stuff that really was not necessary. I felt like, you know, I didn't sign up for this. It was okay. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. It was entertaining, but that's about it. Then I watched The Platform, which is a Spanish film. I believe this one is a Netflix original, and it was absolutely fantastic. This takes place in a vertical prison, so there's like hundreds of levels, 2 people to each level, and there's this platform that comes down every day, and the food is on that platform. If you're on the top levels, you get first pick of the food. You pretty much get to eat whatever you want, but as it goes down, it's that same platform of food. So by the time it gets to the people at the bottom, there's nothing left and they're starving. This was so brutal, but I loved it because of it, because it just, you know, didn't sugarcoat or anything. It was just brutal. That's the only word I can use to describe it. There are some very intense social commentary in here. Yeah, it says a lot. There's a lot of layers to this movie, and it's so good. It's one of those movies when it brings out the worst in people. People are doing whatever they can to survive, and it's so intense. Our main character is struggling against the system as he's trying to save himself and others in the prison, but he's also slipping into this just complete survival mode. I have to only fend for myself and do whatever it takes to just make it to the next day. It's really hard to describe, but if you can handle some gore, and by some gore I mean a lot of gore, I highly recommend it. There's great performances in here. All the actors were fantastic. The soundtrack was really good. Everything about this movie was so great. 5 out of 5 stars, but it did not make me cry. The last movie that I watched in June was The Old Guard, which was so pleasantly surprising. This is a superhero movie. I believe it is based on comics that I have not read because I'm just not into comics, which is weird because I love superhero movies. We follow a group of immortal heroes, and they can die, but every time they die, they just come back to life. So naturally, there's some pretty fierce warriors. The plot itself wasn't super exciting or groundbreaking, but I mean, it was still interesting enough for me to enjoy it. One of the things I really liked about it was it just felt really grounded and down to earth. It wasn't an insane amount of like CGI or just a bunch of like fantasy stuff. It was really just like, these people can't die, and what happens because of that. And I just liked how realistic it was, even though obviously it's like sci-fi, but it just felt really grounded and down to earth. There are some great action sequences in this, especially with one of the lead characters, Andy. Yes, her name was Andy. She was great. I loved watching her fight. The characters are wonderful. They're so well developed somehow in like a 2-hour time span. I really got attached to them. I truly cared about each and every one of them, and their dynamics were also fantastic. Great friendships, great romantic relationships. The performances in here were really good. Lots of great acting, which, you know, kind of carries the movie. One thing I will say, the soundtrack was god-awful. It was so incredibly frustrating just watching this and thinking about what it would have been like if the soundtrack had been even halfway decent, but no, it was like, I can't even describe it. It was just disgusting and I hated it. Probably solely because of the soundtrack, I gave this 4.5 out of 5 stars instead of 5, because what were they thinking? It did make me cry though. I read 2 whole books in June, which I feel like is an improvement from May, so yay me. The first thing I read was How to Avoid a Climate Disaster by Bill Gates. I can honestly say that I learned a lot reading this book. It was very detailed and very educational, but at the same time it was accessible and really easy to understand, which was really important for me. It wasn't condescending either, which is really nice. This book explains right off the bat, like, why climate change is bad, why it's a problem, and why we need to do something to fix it. The main part of the book is outlining innovations that we have and the innovations that we need to come up with in order to fight climate change and make it so that our planet doesn't just go completely, It puts a lot of emphasis on the need to help lower income countries when we're fighting climate change, and also just the importance of global cooperation, because if the entire world doesn't come together, we're all screwed. My main takeaway from this book is that it's going to be really, 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 really difficult to, fight climate change, but it's not impossible. We have a lot of the tools that we need, and we have the ability to come up with the other tools that we need if everyone works together. There's so much work that has to be done in so many different areas. That was another thing that really surprised me reading this book, was just how vast this issue is and how many things need to be changed. It did get repetitive and kind of boring towards the end. I feel like he could have cut it off before he did, but that's just a minor complaint. I also do think that it was relatively self-aware. Obviously, Bill Gates, being Bill Gates, is a huge contributor to climate change, but he did address that, and he is, from what I could tell from reading this book, working to do better. He's funding a ton of research and a bunch of other stuff to try and combat climate change. So it was pretty self-aware, but yes, you do need to take it with a grain of salt because of who he is and what he does. But I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It didn't make me cry. Read Kingdom of the Blazing Pheonix by Julie C. Dow. This is an East Asian retelling of Snow White. It's the second book in the Rise of the Empress series. The first book, which is back there, is Forest of a Thousand Lanterns, and that is the retelling of the Evil Queen's, her origin story. This takes place in a really fun and beautiful and whimsical world. It was really fun to explore. I really, really, really enjoyed the first half of the plot in a political setting with a very tense situation where we're living in a place where the walls have ears and one misstep and you could be dead, and I love that so much. Then the second half went into a more basic and familiar fantasy quest type of thing, which was fine. It was still exciting and I had fun adventuring with these characters, but I really, really loved the first half a lot more than the second. Overall, I wouldn't say that the characters in here were anything special. They were just kind of there. The main character, Jade, did have some pretty decent development. She definitely grew a lot from the beginning of the story to the end, and I did enjoy reading about that, but overall the characters weren't anything special. This is yet another book that got repetitive and boring. There were some themes that just kept coming back. I felt like it was just saying the same thing over and over and over again, and I just wanted to throw it across the room. The ending was a bit anticlimactic and predictable. It was so very predictable, which is kind of unavoidable when you're dealing with a retelling, so I'll cut it some slack there. Another thing I didn't enjoy so much was that there was zero falling action. This happens with a lot of books. It's over like that, and I needed a bit more time to settle into this new reality instead of just a few pages. Let's say I enjoyed this, I had fun with it, it kept me invested enough in this story to keep going. I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars, and it did not make me cry. Okay, so for what I want to read in July, I have 3 books because I'm feeling ambitious because it is summer and I have slightly more time. I want to read Puddin and Pumpkin by Julie Murphy. I believe these are both companion books to Dumplin', that's what it's called, which I have read and I enjoyed. I'm hoping these are just some fun, cute contemporaries that'll be perfect for summer. I'm going to the beach soon, so I'll probably bring one or both of these with me. But can we just talk about this spine? I picked it up from the library today and I looked at this and I died a little inside because it's so cute. And then I want to read, what's it called? Oh my god. Anyway, the Wind Blows by Rainbow Rowell. So this is the 3rd book in the Simon Snow series. This series is very heavily inspired by Harry Potter. The first book, Carry On, takes place at a school for magic, and it centers around a gay romance, which is like the main reason why I read it, because it's a power couple, y'all. Book 2, Wayward Son, was highly disappointing. It did not satisfy me, but I'm hopeful that this third book will be better. Anyway, The Wind Blows comes out on July 6th, and can we just talk about the title for a second? Like, the Bohemian Rhapsody reference is giving me so much happiness. That is it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I will see you next time with another video. Bye.